Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about one sample hypothesis testing in Excel. Note that because Excel does not have a specific function or specific tool in data analysis toolpack for one sample hypothesis testing, to make our life easier, we are using Excel templates. The templates are provided in your textbook on Canvas and chapter Excel file. So here how the templates look like. So the first thing that you need to do is identify the situation of your example. The most important thing is whether the population is known or unknown. If the question gives you clue regarding the historical data and the standard deviation of population, then we go with this part of template, the population known, which assumes Z distribution and performs Z test for you. If the population is not known, and usually you see a data set given to you and no explicitly mentioning things regarding the population, then you assume unknown population. We go with this template that assumes T distribution and goes for T test. The other condition that you may see is that when we are talking about a proportion and we are doing hypothesis on a proportion, then your template is this part, one sample t-test for proportion, and again we are assuming Z distribution and we are performing Z test for proportion. Okay, now let's do one example together to see how I'm going to use this template to help you with it. Look at example 712. We have a data set regarding transportation and consumer survey about transportation. Usually, first of all, we don't have any clue regarding the population, so we assume unknown population and we perform t-test. The other thing is that usually the question gives you something that you want to prove, give you a claim. We usually put our claim in, not usually, we should put our claim in alternative hypothesis. In this example, as an exception, the question is giving you null hypothesis. So pay attention to this one. So explicitly, these are given as null hypothesis, so we include them in null hypothesis. Let's start with part A. The first thing that you want to do, read the question and actually write down the null and alternative hypothesis, because it will be a very helpful way when you want to interpret your result. So the first part is saying that individuals spend at least 8 hours per week in their vehicles. So the null hypothesis is given to us that mean is more than 8, more than equal. So the alternative is going to be less than 8. So remember, the equal sign can only be seen in null hypothesis. We cannot put equal sign in alternative hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is average is more than equal 8 and the alternative is less than 8. So let's go for part A and bring a template. I'll go to my template. It is unknown. We already know it is unknown. So I copy this part, go back to my page and paste it here. And then I start filling this part and the rest will be calculated. The sample size, you can use count, but for the sake of time is 50. The sample mean is average hours spent in vehicle, which is column F. Standard deviation is STDEV sample, again for hours. And the hypothesized value is 8. Did I calculate this one correctly? Okay. if it was rounding to no decimal, that is why we would see exactly 8. So this is the correct. As soon as you enter the input data, the template calculates everything for you, and it is also giving you the interpretation, the conclusion. But you need to decide whether the question is lower tail, upper tail, or two tail, and then use the correct part of your template. So in our question, for the first of all, it is not two tail because we have a direction, so it is one tail. Second, we look at the direction of alternative hypothesis and decide whether it is lower tail or upper tail. So our alternative hypothesis is less than something, so it is lower one tail. So we look at this part of our template and interpret this part. So we cannot reject the null hypothesis, meaning that we need to accept our null hypothesis. So we do not have enough evidence to show the average is less than 8. So we are assuming that the average is more than equal 8 hours per week. So this is the way that we interpret it based on the context of our study. Now let's look at part B. Individuals drive on average of 600 miles per week. So here we are having a specific number and we want to see whether that specific number is correct or not. So our null hypothesis is equal to 600 and our alternative is not equal to 600. So let's do again, copy the related template and interpret it. So this is part B. I go back to my template. I'm using the same template because still the population is not known. I copy it and paste it here and start filling the table. The sample size is 50. The sample mean is equal average of miles per week, which is column G, and then a standard deviation of the same column. The hypothesized value is 600 and the significance level is 0.05. So if nothing else is mentioned, we always use significant level of 0.05 unless the question explicitly mentioned look at a specific significance level. Now everything is calculated for us. We need to interpret it. We look at our hypothesis. We have just equal sign, no direction, so it is two-tailed. And we look at our template and focus on this part of the template, which is two-tailed. So we interpret this one. So it is saying that we need to reject the null hypothesis, meaning that we reject that the average is 600. So we can conclude we have enough evidence that the average is not 600. We don't know the direction, more than 600, less than 600. We didn't test that. We just know that it is not 600. Part C is very similar to these two questions, but it is upper tail. I leave it for you to practice yourself, but let's look at part D. Part D is saying that at least 80% of individuals are satisfied with their vehicle. So we are looking at a proportion and we want to see whether that proportion is correct or not. So our null hypothesis is more than equal 80% and alternative is obviously less than 80%. So the proportion more than equal 80% or alternative less than 80%. So let me copy the related template. I go to the template section. It is a proportion. So in the proportion, we don't care whether it is known or unknown. Proportion, we only have this template. Copy it, paste it here, start filling the table. The sample size is 50. The sample proportion, we need to look at whether they are satisfied or not, which is yes or no. So we need to count the number of yes and divide it by the total. So we use count if. Count if the range is this column C, comma, and the criteria is whether it is equal to yes, we count it, otherwise we don't count it, and we divide it by the total number to give us the proportion. So 70% are saying yes in our sample, and the hypothesized value is 0.8. And now we have the result. So which part of our template is useful for this example? Let's look at our hypothesis. So the alternative hypothesis is less than. It means that it is a lower tail test. So we go and interpret this part. So it is saying to reject the null hypothesis, meaning that we are rejecting that they spend more than that 80% are satisfied. So we go with the alternative. We have enough evidence to say that less than 80% are satisfied. So hope this helps you. I suggest that you do this practice with other sheets that are given to you, and let me know if you have any question.